Political power is making headlines today. The United States President Donald Trump has criticized the United Kingdom over the Chagos Islands deal, linking it to his push for greater U.S. control of strategic territories, calling UK's move as an act of great stupidity. Now, while we look at Trump's statement, we move over to Uganda. President Yoweri Musevein has secured a 7th term in office, dismissing the opposition after a low turnout election. Meanwhile, Bob Wine decries his election victory as fraudulent. As we dive into the details today, this and more will be explored in our flash news. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Tabitha Alcor. Let's begin. U.S. President Donald Trump has sharply criticized the United Kingdom's decision to return the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, describing the move as a major security miscalculation and linking it to his long-standing argument that the United States must take control of Greenland. Let's take a look.
To have it, they have to have this done. They can't protect it. Denmark, they're wonderful people, and I know the leaders are very good people, but they don't even go there. And you know, because the boat went there 500 years ago and then left, that doesn't give you title to property. So we'll be talking about it with the various people. We've had tremendous success, and I've done more for NATO than anybody else. I don't think you'd have NATO right now. I got them to go 5% and pay as opposed to 2% and not pay. I've done more than any other American president for NATO by far. And we'll see how that goes. But Greenland is very important.
Also, in a post on his Truth Social platform on Tuesday, President Trump condemned the UK's government agreement with transfer sovereignty of the Chagos archipelago to Mauritius while leasing back the strategically significant Diego Garcia military base for 99 years. The base is jointly used by the United States and the United Kingdom and plays a critical role in U.S. military operations in the Indian Ocean. President Trump characterized the deal as reckless and claimed it weakened Western sovereign security interests. He argued that decisions such as these illustrated broader failures among U.S. allies and reinforced his view that the United States must secure key strategic territories, including Greenland, to protect its national security. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom rejects Trump's criticism. The United Kingdom government has dismissed Trump's comment, insisting the agreement will not be revisited. Senior minister said the deal was necessary to resolve long-standing international legal disputes surrounding the island and to safeguard continued access to the Diego Garcia base. Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, said in an interview with Rich and Frost that the agreement had already been legislated for, formally signed and structured to ensure the long-term operation of the military facility. He stressed that the agreement protects British and American defense interests for decades to come and had previously received US support. Let's take a listen.
You alluded to, this was a deal that was welcomed at the time by the American administration, but also by European allies and others, given its strategic significance in the world. We were in a tricky spot in that the island was previously part of the British Empire. There were legal challenges to the island and those types of things. And so we needed to find a modern application to protect its military capabilities, which we all rely on, which is what we've done.
Jones also defended Prime Minister Keir Starmer's diplomatic approach to Washington, arguing that quiet engagement rather than public confrontation had helped preserve Britain's interest amid shifts in U.S. foreign policy. Now, is this a reversal of earlier US support? Trump's latest remarks represent a notable shift from earlier US positions. Both Trump and his administration had previously welcomed the Chagos agreement when it was finalized in 2025. At the time, US officials praised the deal as a historic resolution that ensured stability and continuity for the Diego Garcia base. Also, former US President Joe Biden had also endorsed the agreement, describing it as a successful conclusion to negotiations between the UK and Mauritius. His administration said it strongly supported the outcome, viewing it as beneficial to regional security and the US-UK alliance. This decision and Trump's statement most probably has it caused a strain to their relationship. Political analysts say Trump's renewed attack highlights growing strain in the so-called special relationship between London and Washington. U.S. correspondent Mark Stone noted that the tone of Trump's comments suggests a deterioration in trust, particularly given that the decision was taken while President Trump was already in office and initially threw no objections. The observers have also pointed to the broader geopolitical context, including Trump's repeated claims over Greenland and his increasingly confrontational posture towards traditional allies, as evidence of a more transactional and unilateral U.S. foreign policy stance continues. Now, while we have this story coming up, there's this development coming over, and we're looking at Emmanuel Macron. A further controversy has emerged after President Trump posted screenshots of private messages from French President Emmanuel Macron. In the messages, Macron questioned President Trump's position on Greenland and proposed a G7 meeting in Paris alongside a separate diplomatic dinner. The release of the messages has raised concerns about European leaders about diplomatic norms and thrust, adding another layer of tension to already strained transatlantic relations. Now, away from there, I'm bringing you a recent update, of course, over to Uganda here in Africa. Ugandan President Yoweri Musevein has downplayed the performance of the opposition following his decisive re-election, saying low voter turnout spared rival parties from a more humiliating defeat. Speaking to the nation on Sunday, a day after he was declared the winner of Thursday's presidential election, Musevein said the result underscored the dominance of the ruling National Resistance Movement, which has governed Uganda for 4 decades. He argued that the opposition benefited from the absence of millions of voters who he believed are supporters of the ruling party. Let's take a listen.
You saw how they voted massively. They ignored the nonsense because I was able to explain to them.
Official figures put voter turnout at 52%, the lowest since Uganda's return to multi-party politics in 2006. Musevein said many of those who stayed away from polling stations were members of his party, suggesting the opposition would have fared far worse had turnout been higher. Now, addressing supporters and dignitaries from his country home in western Uganda, Musevein made his first public remarks since securing victory. According to the Electoral Commission, he won more than 71.6% of the vote, while his closest challenger, opposition leader Bobi Wine, secured 24.7%. Wine, who is a 43-year-old musician turned politician whose real name is Yagulanyi Sentamu, has rejected the result as fraudulent and is considering a legal challenge. Previous court petitions against Museveni's victories have failed, although judges have repeatedly recommended electoral reforms. Let's take a look.
This time, not the police, not the military, but Electoral Commission officials took part in critiquing ballot papers in favor of General Museveni. Glad enough, we have record of them. We have videos of them doing that.
Bobi Wine seems to have evidence, but then we'll see that he is 45 and Musevein is 81. Is Africa's third, Musevein as 81 is Africa's third longest-serving president, and he will begin a seventh term that brings him closer to 5 decades in power. Supporters credit him with maintaining relative stability in a country that holds hundreds of thousands of refugees fleeing conflict in neighboring states. During his address, Musevein accused opposition figures of attempting to incite violence during the election. He said security forces killed at least seven opposition supporters in the central district of Piggy after they allegedly attacked a polling station with machetes following the defeat of a parliamentary candidate from Wine's party. Now, what are the election's concerns and security clampdown? The election was marked by a days-long nationwide internet shutdown and widespread technical failures of biometric voter identification machines, which delayed voting in several areas, including the capital, Kampala. Wayne has also alleged ballot stuffing in some regions considered strongholds of the ruling party. The malfunctioning of biometric equipment is expected to feature prominently in any legal challenge to the result. Security forces maintained a heavy presence throughout the campaign. Ryan has accused authorities of harassment, saying his supporters were dispersed with tear gas. Citing security concerns, he campaigned while wearing a flak jacket and helmet. Let's take a look.
Look at the impunity. Look at the injustice. This is Uganda police doing this. But we shall never give up. We shall never give up. We shall be free in our country. You can do all that, but it will come to an end. All this will come to an end. We are not committing any crime. Officer, we are fighting.
Will never give up. I mean, this is what we see in Africa, having leaders living for the longest of times in power, longest of decades in power. But then Musevein has remained in power by overseeing constitutional changes that removed presidential term limits and age restrictions. Several potential rivals have been jailed or politically sidelined, while the president has not indicated when he plans to retire. Veteran opposition figure Kizza Besigye, a 4-time presidential candidate, remains in detention on recent charges he says are politically motivated. Meanwhile, Uganda has never experienced a peaceful transfer of presidential power since gaining independence from Britain more than 6 decades ago. This is what we see in Africa. Now, moving over and bringing you to Congo. The Congolese armed forces have regained control of the South Kivu city of Uvira following the withdrawal of Rwanda-backed M23 rebels, according to military and government sources. M23 fighters seized Uvira in early December but announced on Thursday that they were handing responsibility for the city to the international community. On Sunday, pro-Kinshasa Wazalendo fighters moved into Uvira's southern district, with Congolese special forces deploying later the same day. Authorities confirmed the full recapture of the city on Monday. Residents welcomed the arrival of the forces, cheering as they entered the city amid sporadic gunfire. However, the operation was accompanied by reports of looting in several neighborhoods, with shops and homes targeted, according to local sources. Although the rebels had announced their withdrawal last month, reportedly in response to a request from the United States, residents said M23 police and military elements remained present in the strategic city for weeks afterward. Meanwhile, provincial officials in South Kivu say M23 fighters have now repositioned themselves in the surrounding hills overlooking Uvira, raising concerns about continued security threat to the city. This is development right here. We'll definitely bring you up to speed with the details as they unfold. Until next time, this is where we'll be wrapping it up on today's Flash News. Remember, I'll bring you Untold Stories and Undaunted at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. Until then, do have a pleasant day and stay safe.